even if I just don't do the wrong thing, or if I just do the right thing, it still might not be good enough because my heart matters. So how am I going to be as perfect as God? I can't make it. I've been offline for a little bit, but we had the holidays, Christmas in between there, and I had to kind of shift away from being able to focus on the podcast because a little thing called winter tends to show up in the Northeast.
Is it really?
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't seen a bad one this year. That's been kind of nice.
Which I'm grateful for, by the way.
Yeah, so are we. So my family was living in a camper all the way up until almost Christmas, and so I had to pour my focus into trying to get us into a physical house with water, with heat, so we could live out the winter, not in a camper. Camper's not good for winter.
That doesn't really work for cold weather, does it?
Not at all. But we had a good Christmas. It was great to be together as a family and just enjoy that time of focusing on who Christ is, that He came for us, that it leads all the way to Easter. Like, I have a hard time talking about Christmas without talking about Easter because it's the whole purpose for Christ coming to earth.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, we are grateful to have a place to be with a roof, with heat, with some doors and a bathroom that works and a functional water and heated water. So yeah, some things that you take for granted that for us as a family, we are really happy to have just the basics.
And for you, with a big family, it's like 6 of you.
Yeah, 6 of us. And then as we moved into the physical structure, it was all us in one room. We kind of felt like someone out on the prairie with a one-room cabin, but it's been a lot of fun, and there's tensions too, but that's all right. Yeah. We have a bedroom. My wife and I have a bedroom now.
I thought your family was perfect. Yeah.
Absolutely not. Yep.
Yeah, so last time Matthew actually was in the studio and we were talking a little bit about Christmas, and before we start, I'll have to ask you about a New Year's resolution, because we touched a little bit on New Year's resolution, and I think resolution is biblical because God asks us to grow, and the Bible put a big emphasis on growing so we can be complacent. So when we take resolution, it's a good thing. Do you have any New Year's resolution?
Yeah, do I have resolutions? I don't call them that, but yes. So I agree with you. I think that's really important. I make some goals for the new year. So there's things that I'll want to progress in, and I think if we don't, just any person, but certainly Christians, if we don't make a mark and make a statement of here's what I'm shooting for, we'll shoot for nothing. And so I think it's really important just for the growth to be able to put some benchmarks in our path. One of the things I'm working on this year, just in my own speaking, is to become much more clear and in my application in my speaking, to have clear, attainable application marks for every message. So it's easy for someone to leave after hearing and looking at God's word and say, here's what I'm going to do. And I really want to work on that. And sometimes I'm too general and I need to be more specific, but that's just one. But I have other goals. I have goals in regard to my health and my spiritual growth and in my just in my work as well. I mean, there's 3 different ministries that we'd really like to launch and get on their feet and going on their own this year. I was meeting with someone just this afternoon with our young people's ministry at Berean, and just we're fostering that, but hopefully have some new volunteers to head it up and be running with it for 2023.
Definitely, how exciting! Now it's great to be back together in our studio. I've been looking forward to this topic and to share the whole reason Jesus came to earth.
Yeah, Yeah, the last few episodes we've been talking about the Sermon on the Mount. So we started with Beatitudes. We looked at some of how Jesus teaches the law. Both here's what you've heard. So here's the tradition. Here's the way other people have taught it. But have you thought about this? and Jesus gives a whole new perspective on it. And throughout the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is giving core principles of life and faith. And they're often very different from the way people of his time, certainly, and our time would think about life, and be able to think through their faith and progress in that. Jesus challenges the core of how people think through things, their whole perspectives, and Jesus challenges that.
Yeah, as I remember, we ended as Jesus had been challenging the religious elite of this day about the law.
Yeah.
They were focused on keeping the letter of the law, and Jesus said that the heart was more important. The motive matters.
Yeah, you're right on. The leaders' whole perspective was to fulfill the rules of the law, and they felt that if they did their religious rules good enough, that they would earn God's favor. They'd gain God's favor, and that's really what religion, when you want to define terms or whatever, that's what religion is. Let me do enough good to gain God's approval or God's favor. And Jesus sweeps in, and I'm just broad stroke paraphrasing, but really the idea of, sorry guys, you can't be good enough. And he goes through the law, and we looked at some of his, how he challenged their viewpoint on the law. And the idea of, sorry guys, you can't be good enough, because it's more than just what you do. It's about the intent of your heart. It's about the thoughts in your head. It's about your words, your actions, not just what everyone else can see, but what you do in quiet, and what you do in your home, and with your family, and in your closet, and when no one's looking, and when it's dark. And that's what matters. It matters who you are as your entire person. It takes perfection. To be good enough would be to be perfect. And God is perfect. And if we want to attain to the place of having a relationship with God, we'd have to be perfect.
Wow.
And Jesus points out that's just not possible.
Well, I mean, talking about perfection, I certainly don't match up to that. I don't measure up.
I don't either. No, we don't. We do not measure up. But the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is calling for that self-evaluation. So let me look at and he goes through different points on the law and different perspectives, and he says, okay, the idea is, do you match up? Look into my own heart. Do I match up? And I don't. And he comes down to the end of his whole talk about the law. And you've heard it said, I say, and at the very end, driving back at the heart, he comes out with this and lays down the gauntlet to say, everyone else around you loves their friends, right? Jesus will pull down the law to say, love God and love your neighbor. And in this passage, it says everybody loves their friends, and I want to combine the two and say your neighbor isn't just your friends, because Jesus will go on to say everyone loves their neighbor. I mean, everybody loves their friend. No big deal. Love your enemy. Love your enemy, which is really tough. Yeah. Which is really tough. Love the person just punched you. Love the person that just shouted you down. Love the person that has belittled you or fights against you or wants you to fail. Love that person. And that's how far the heart has to go to reach the type of heart God has for us.
And I would add a note, it's tough enough to tolerate friends that sometimes are acting like enemies.
I love that. Yeah. We don't always get along with our friends, do we? That's true. But if we want to reach to the place of God's heart and how he treats us, that's how far the heart has to go to actually love our enemies, love our enemies. And at the very end of all that discussion, Jesus will, again, he kind of lays down the gauntlet. He says, you are to be perfect. So this should be our goal. New Year's resolutions, right? Here's our goal. You are to be perfect.
That is unreachable.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This is the New Year's resolution that you throw out there and you never reach. Yeah. But this is the goal. This is the goal. You are to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect.
Yeah, because people. I'm sorry, man. I mean,
that's right.
You, because sometimes people talk about smart goal, like reachable, like
sure,
attainable, attainable, and that are realistic.
Yes.
So, if I am to be perfect, from the start, I know that's not gonna be. I'm not.
You're not gonna make that, right? So that should be the rhetorical effect. Jesus has thrown that out. I think to everyone in the crowd, they should say, "Well, why am I even trying then? There's no possible way I can do that." You've just told me how if I just don't commit adultery, it's still not good enough, because in my heart and in my mind I may think about something I shouldn't think about, and I want someone I shouldn't want, and even if I just don't do the wrong thing, or if I just do the right thing, it still might not be good enough because my heart matters. So how am I going to be as perfect as God? I can't make it.
Yeah. It's not reachable.
Yeah. We're never going to be that kind of perfect. And so, I mean, that's kind of the bad news. I think if he stopped there, that would be awful depressing. And that should be the rhetorical effect of that question. Like, you're to be as perfect as God is perfect. And we should, in a way, throw up our hands and say, I guess we fail. There's no way to get there. I'm so thankful that Jesus didn't stop there. He didn't stop there. And so Jesus, his whole purpose, he comes from God to be the answer. We can't have the answer in and of ourselves, or our own effort, or our own goals, or our own resolutions. We can never attain to the place of God or to his perfection, or to be able to stand in the same room and say, I'm on your level, I can have a relationship with you. We can't do that. And that's why Jesus came for us. God didn't want to be in heaven without us. He wanted us. He loves us. And so one of Jesus' closest friends, his disciple, John, spent 3 years on earth with Jesus. He was one of what Jesus would call one of his most loved disciples. And John wrote this about Jesus' ministry. He said, for this is how God loved the world. He gave his son. He's talking about Jesus. He gave his son so that everyone who believes in him should not perish. So wouldn't die, wouldn't be separated from God, but would have eternal life. So that death wouldn't define us, but instead life would define us.